had way too much to drink, and
Okay.
I don't really lead you through. It's not like a bad situation.
The night of the 8th of March 2024 in Hamilton Township, New Jersey was cold and quiet, the kind of late evening stillness where most homes were settling down and the streets had emptied of movement. At 10:07 p.m., that calm shifted the moment a 911 call came through reporting a domestic dispute at a residence on Orchard Avenue. The dispatch information was brief, but the undertone carried urgency. Domestic calls arrive with little warning and come layered with unknowns. They are among the most unpredictable incidents officers respond to, where emotions run high, judgment falters, and danger can escalate without a signal. Hamilton Township police officers Derek Fiabane and Paul Piromali were sent to the location. Both officers had experience with volatile domestic situations, but every new call carried its own risk. As they drove through the dim neighborhood streets, they prepared themselves for the possibility that the situation inside the home might shift the instant the door opened. Officers responding to domestic disputes know better than to assume calm or cooperation. They approach expecting confusion, shouting, resistance, or sudden violence. Their goal is always the same: stabilize the scene, separate those involved, assess threats, and protect anyone at risk. Orchard Avenue was a typical suburban stretch. Older homes, quiet yards, and tree shadows falling across the pavement under the glow of streetlights. When the officers arrived, nothing outside indicated how severe the situation inside might be. There were no neighbors gathered, no shouting bleeding into the night air, no obvious devastation. Domestic disturbances often conceal their volatility behind closed doors, and that calm facade only deepens the unpredictability. The officers approached the residence, positioning themselves for a safe line of sight and listening for any signs coming from inside. They knocked and announced themselves, following protocol intended to avoid surprising or escalating the individual inside. Moments later, the encounter that would follow shifted from an ordinary response to one of the most dangerous scenarios officers face: an armed confrontation within the confines of a private residence. Inside the home was four-year-old Vincent Correa. What unfolded between Correa and the responding officers escalated far beyond the initial call. Instead of stepping out peacefully or communicating through the doorway, Correa engaged the officers in a sudden and violent exchange. In a matter of moments, gunfire erupted. The confined walls of a residential interior amplify danger in ways that are difficult to describe: tight angles, limited cover, poor visibility, and the impossibility of retreating without exposing oneself. Correa fired at officers Fiabane and Piromali, and the officers returned fire. In close quarters gunfights, decisions are made in fractions of seconds. Officers rarely have space to reposition, and threats are measured not in yards but in inches. Officer Fiabane was struck during the exchange. The moments following the exchange of gunfire inside the Orchard Avenue residence unfolded with the urgency and focus years of training are designed to support. After Vincent Correa fell and the officers confirmed that the immediate threat was neutralized, the atmosphere shifted from combat to crisis management. Residential shootings create a disorienting environment. Smoke still lingering in the air, objects displaced from gunfire or rapid movement, radios crackling with updates, and officers moving with a blend of adrenaline and precision. Officer Paul Piromali immediately notified dispatch that shots had been fired, that the suspect was down, and that an officer had been hit. Additional units began converging on Orchard Avenue as emergency medical teams were dispatched. The front of the house, which had seemed so still only minutes earlier, was now a convergence point for flashing lights, incoming officers, and medical responders hurrying to the scene. Inside, Officer Fiabane's wound required immediate attention. Officers are trained to apply pressure, stabilize injuries, and slow bleeding long enough for paramedics to take over. Another officer stepped in to assist him, while others began clearing and securing the residence. Even after a threat appears to be over, protocol requires methodical confirmation that no additional individuals, weapons, or risks remain inside. Every room is checked, every doorway approached with caution, acknowledging that shootings inside homes often hide layers of complexity. As responders moved through the residence, they recovered both the rifle and handgun from Correa's person. The decision to arm himself with multiple firearms broadened the threat significantly. Officers already facing a confined, high-risk environment now had confirmation that the suspect had immediate access to more than one lethal weapon during the confrontation. The presence of both weapons would later be documented in the investigative reports and used to help determine how the encounter unfolded. While some responders focused on securing Fiabane and controlling his bleeding, others directed their efforts toward Correa. Despite the danger he posed moments earlier, the transition to emergency medical care was immediate. Officers are trained to provide aid, even to individuals who have just attempted to harm them. Medical responders began checking Correa for a pulse, assessing his wounds, and preparing equipment to try to resuscitate him. The pressure of the moment was intensified by the knowledge that time was rapidly slipping away. Paramedics arrived and continued treatment efforts. They worked to stabilize Correa inside the residence, shifting equipment, opening space, and communicating with officers who assisted where needed. With the clock moving relentlessly forward, they administered the necessary medical interventions based on the severity of his injuries. But despite those efforts, Correa's wounds were catastrophic. At 10:38 p.m., just over 30 minutes after the initial 911 call, he was pronounced deceased. The focus of the investigation remained on determining whether the officer's use of force was justified based on the threat presented. The presence of two firearms on Correa's person significantly shaped this assessment. A rifle in a confined residential interior elevates the threat level dramatically. A handgun in close quarters compounds that danger even further. Officers responding to such a threat must make immediate decisions to protect themselves and others in the home. As the investigation continued, department officials provided updates confirming Officer Fiabane's condition. His injuries, while serious, were not life-threatening, and he was released from the hospital after receiving medical care. This outcome brought relief to the department and community, acknowledging how easily the gunfire could have resulted in multiple fatalities. Community reactions followed the release of initial information. Incidents involving police use of force often spark questions and concerns, but in this case, early indications emphasized the seriousness of the threat the officers faced. The recovery of both a rifle and handgun from Correa's person underscored the danger posed during the encounter. The final assessment affirmed the sequence of events. Officers responded to a domestic dispute, encountered an armed individual who fired at them, and returned fire in defense. The outcome, while tragic, aligned with the realities of responding to armed confrontations inside private residences. The confined space, limited visibility, unpredictable movements, and immediate presence of multiple firearms created a scenario where officers were forced to make life-preserving decisions within seconds. By the conclusion of the investigation, one fact remained clear. The incident was driven entirely by the unexpected escalation inside the home. Officers arrived to address a domestic dispute, but instead faced gunfire from a suspect armed with 2 lethal weapons. Their response, medical aid efforts, and scene management were consistent with training and with the protocols designed to protect both officers and civilians. The night ended with the death of Vincent Correa, the injury of Officer Fia Bain, and the recovery of 2 firearms inside the residence. The outcome served as a stark reminder of the dangers officers face when responding to domestic disputes and the unpredictable nature of armed confrontations inside confined residential spaces. The events on Orchard Avenue would remain a significant case in Hamilton Township, informing training, reinforcing procedures, and illustrating the razor-thin margin between routine response and life-threatening violence.